councillors, senior staff, members of the public in the gallery, and to Mr. Vivian in the media gallery. Welcome to you all for this ordinary council meeting for the month of December, the last meeting for the calendar year of 2022. The normal practice is to acknowledge country, and so the Shire of Esperance acknowledges the Kepakul Wajiri people of the Noongar Nation and the Naju people who are the traditional custodians of this land and their continuing connection to land, waters and community. We pay our respect to elders past, present and emerging, and we extend that respect to other Aboriginal Australians today. I did fail to acknowledge those people that are joining us online. Thank you very much to those people who are there. So we move into our agenda. We do have an apology from Councillor Oborne, who's not able to be with us this evening. So there's an apology from her, and we have the any notifications of granted leave of absence. No notifications. Item 4 of our agenda is applications for leave of absence. No applications. And then we go to our announcement by person presiding, and the only item I have to announce to you is that I received a Christmas card that goes to all of the councillors. And it's, if I just read that to you, I've done my duty. It says, "Dear Ian, Ron and councillors, thank you for all your support in 2022. It was a big year for Fortescue Future Industries, and we're very excited to continue the progress, the project into 2023. Wishing you all a very Merry Christmas and a safe and happy New Year. Tori and the FFI team." So thank you to FFI and Tori Castledown for that message. So we have dealt with the apology, and we have also dealt with the statements from the President. So we go to item 6, which is the declaration of members' interests. And I ask, are there any declarations of financial interest from any councillors here this evening? Or senior staff member? No? Declarations of proximity interest. Any declarations of proximity? No? Okay, we go to 6.3, which is declarations of impartiality interest. Any declarations of impartiality? No. Okay. So we move then from there to public question time, and we do have what appears to be a question from Dr. Newkirk from the gallery. Dr. Newkirk, would you come forward to the microphone, please?
I've got a couple of questions. The first one is to do with the road safety program as it is implemented on 11 Mile Beach Road. And I note a fact sheet and a nomination form that was obtained through Freedom of Information on the project of doing that work. And I note also the estimated cost of it, and there is an item in all those worth $16,116 for an audible edge, which was deemed a key feature of the program. As of today, there's still no audible edge at this stretch of road, and when can we expect this to be installed?
Okay, Mr. Walker, would you like to respond to the question?
Yeah, through the chair, I'll respond quickly. We've been in contact with the Superlux, who are our contractor that we've already appointed to do the works. their advice to us was they do not recommend sticking the audio tactile lines down while there's any moisture. Unfortunately, for the past 6 months, we've had a lot of moisture. So they have been programmed in for January and February, and we're trying to line that up with the other road safety program that we've got, which is Fisheries Road, going from Richlands Road out to the end of the Seal Road there. So it'd be nice to try to get them done at the same time instead of having to pay for 2 mobilisations.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank
Dr.
you.
Muko?
Second set of questions is to do with sand that is being trucked in to replenish that lost near the groins on Norseman Road. And I note a comment in the meeting of the 11th of October this year where it says sand renourishment via trucks costs $14.67 per cubic metre. Can Shire advise how much sand is being trucked in, the current cost of trucking the sand, and where the sand is sourced from?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Walker, could you respond to this?
So through the chair, we do not have the accurate costs. We can't get them until we actually finalise the campaign. The sand is coming from Ocean Street Development, so it will be cheaper than our estimate of taking sand from Wiley Bay landfill site. So it's a lot shorter distance, so it won't cost, hopefully won't cost the $14 per cubic metre. It should be less than that, but obviously that's a finite supply there. We'll have to take the other questions on notice.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And the third one is a set of questions to do with sorry, the sand backpassing project in general. And I looked for the status of this project in the council plan summary, but I couldn't find it. Where does this plan sit in the council plan summary, and what is its item number?
Okay, well, I'd ask somebody else can share the item number. Is that Mrs. Baxter or is it Mr. Walker? The item number of it, Mr. Walker?
Well, through the chair, as part of the council plan, there is an action item around sand backpassing, and we report on that monthly as part of our reports back to council. I couldn't tell you the direct number off top of my head, but yeah, there is action there that we report on.
Thank
Well,
you.
maybe I can get that resolved just because I couldn't find it in the plan. But I've got some general questions about the sand backpassing. And again, I note a comment in the meeting of the 11th of October. It says there, it should be noted the Shire has been advised we need to enter into the agreement, and it refers to the $750,000 grant from state government as soon as possible, as the project delivery time frames are very tight. Can Shire now advise of the sand backpassing project start and proposed completion date?
I think that's a very difficult question to ask at the present time with the work program that's on, but I'll ask Mr. Walker if he has a planned date where he might like to see this project started.
So we are working with the Department of Transport on this project at the moment. And just to note as well, we've received federal grant funding for the project as well, so there's more money on the table. We are at the moment getting BMT to review the pipeline design, so they're working through a process now of determining the pipe size and the pressure ratings and the components that we need to deliver that pipe. From there, we will be looking to tender in early January and hopefully get a tender awarded either late January or early February to supply that pipe. That's going to be the crucial component. So we're working through the process. Unfortunately, can't skip some of those steps. I wouldn't think we would be having much on groundworks until late February, early March at the earliest. I can't give you a completion time frame. There's some other stuff going on.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Walker.
I've got a couple of related questions, but maybe they have to wait till February as well. I was interested in the total cost, operational and capital, and the component that is borne by the Shire, but I presume that if there is preliminary work, the preliminary work is not part of the project or is covered separately?
Look, I think that'll be responded to you in due course. I think
No.
we're at the, well, it's been explained, we have to go through a whole process in purchasing the pipe and working with the Department of Transport through those processes, Dr. Newkirk, and so I think that we could give you a better information to your specific question, which was when will it start and when will it finish. As I heard your question, that can be dealt with at a later date when we go closer to making decisions in regard to the start of the program.
I'll keep them in abeyance till, we get to the start of the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Newkirk, I can just answer your question. That the item was 4.1.6. It's irrelevant in the corporate plan or in the council plan.
Thank you, Mr. Burge. Any further questions from the members in the gallery? No, okay. All right, that deals with public question time. Public addresses and deputations. Neil? Okay, petitions? Neil? Right, we go to confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary council meeting on the 22nd of November. And I think there is perhaps a correction to be made on that. Did you endeavour to bring that forward? Councillor O'Donnell, you spoke with me.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's been amended.
Okay.
The correction.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, someone prepared to move the confirmation of the minutes of our November council meeting? Moved by Councillor O'Donnell, seconded. Councillor De Haas. I don't believe it needs any debate. Those in favour, please show. Against, that is carried. Thank you. So we go to delegates' reports without discussion. And Councillor Oborne has sent in her report but isn't available to make comment tonight. Councillor Flanagan.
Nothing further to add.
Councillor O'Donnell.
As tabled. Thank you, Mr. President.
Councillor Graham. Thank you. Councillor De Haas.
As tabled, thank you, Mr. President.
Councillor Horan.
Yes, there's just one amendment, December the 3rd, I assisted with the edge of the bay. And also, have I got there? Can't see. Yep, thank you.
Then we go to Councillor Chambers.
As table, thank you, Mr. President.
Councillor McMullen, you...
Yeah,
have
nil
any-
to report.
you want-
Nil to report.
Nil to report, thank you. Okay, and then my report is there, councillors, for you to see. Could I thank all councillors for representing council on those various events that took place during the month. That was certainly pretty busy activities and attending school presentation events was very much in the flavour of the month, and I thank sincerely councillors that went out and represented council at those various school presentation events. So that completes the councillors' reports. So we go into the business session of the council now. And we start on page 11 is the agenda. For anyone that's watching, welcome, Mr. Smith. No, welcome. No, I'd like to see you here. We go to the first item, which is 12.1.1, the proposed new cemetery local law. Are there any questions you have on this, which might go to Mrs. Phillips or to Mrs. Logan? Yeah, yes.
Mr. President, perhaps if I may, just to make a point of clarification, just to Councillor Chambers, that he's requested amendment to Part 7, Division 1, Item 7.1, changing the words from may to shall, has occurred, and just for Council's noting.
Thank you. Any other questions that councillors might like to ask? Okay, if there's no questions, I take it that someone's prepared to move the recommendation, which is on page 14 of your agendas. Someone prepared? Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation that council request the CEO to, 1, give local public notice of the proposed Shire of Esperance Cemeteries Local Law 2022 in accordance with S.3.12, in brackets 3 of the Local Government Act 1995. 2, forward a copy of the proposed local law and public notice to the Minister for Local Government. And 3, prepare a further report at the conclusion of the public submission period to enable council to consider submissions.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor O'Donnell. Seconded by Councillor De Haas. Councillor O'Donnell, do you wish to speak to this motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I've been lucky to be involved in this working group with 8 community members, and I'd like to sincerely thank their participation with this local law amendments. And a special thanks goes to Ms Logan for all of her work and her team. And also a special thanks goes to Mr Walker and Mr Glee for their knowledge of the workings out there in the cemetery. We all did a fantastic job with the working group, 4 hours on one day. And it was really worthwhile exercise, and I urge councillors to support this so we can send the local law off to the Minister of Local Government. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? Does the seconder wish to speak in favour of the motion?
Nothing to add, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion or an amendment? There's no speakers against or no amendment. I put it to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Against, that is carried 8 votes to 0. We now go to item 12.1.2, the local planning scheme number 24, amendment number 9, which is on page 51 of our agenda, and the recommendations is on page 59. Are there any questions you might have on this item to Mr Henley or Mrs Phillips? Any questions? Okay, I take it that you have no questions, so therefore, is there someone prepared to move the recommendation? I won't ask you to read all of those numbers. I'll ask you to abbreviate that. Councillor Chambers.
I'd like to move a motion which is slightly different to the Shire's, the councillor's motion, and that is to, as the officer's recommendation is from number 1, from dot point 1 through to 25, and then with the addition of a dot point 26, which is amending the Schedule 1 by inserting a new clause 40 as follows. 40, cat control. All cats are to be registered in accordance with, all cats are to be registered in accordance with the provision of the Cat Act 2011. B, no cat is permitted to leave the property unless under the control of a responsible person. C, if the local government forms the opinion that there has been a breach of the requirements of subclauses A and B, it may, in writing, require the owner to make good the breach in the manner and within the time stated in the notice. The notice may be served on the owner personally or by posting it to the last address of the known owner by the local government, and if served by post, shall be deemed to have been served 3 days clear after the date of posting. D, a person to whom notice under this clause is given may apply for a review of the requirement to the State Administrative Tribunal in accordance with the Planning and Development Act 2005, Part 14. And E, failure to comply with the notice under the clause shall be a breach of the provisions in this scheme. And then dot point 2 and 3 as per the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Is there a seconder to the motion? This is a motion now, not an amendment. This is a motion. Seconded by Councillor De Haas. Councillor Chambers, you can speak to your motion obviously we're speaking about the town planning scheme amendment, and this is a added item to it. So
Yes.
I'll leave it with you.
I believe the amendments that are in the officer's recommendation through the workshop and everything else have been fully explained, and I understand them, and I see that they are only going to help to improve the local planning scheme. As to the added dot point, the Shire of Esperance, as everyone knows, has been in the process of developing a local cat law, and during that process we've been advised that within the cat law we tried to put in clauses that would restrict cats from wandering and from causing a nuisance to other people. And unfortunately there's no controls can be put in place in local laws to stop cats roaming, as the state government failed to facilitate this within the review of the Cat Act that they did. If you have a look at the Dog Act, Part 6 of the Dog Act actually has an entire part on the control of dogs, where they can be taken off the property, where they can and can't go, and how they're to be looked after. There's none of this in the Cat Act, which makes it very difficult for the local shire to do anything in a local law to facilitate it. Cats should be kept on the owner's property so as not to cause issues with other people, animals, and also for the cat's safety. They should be not on other people's property. I know from experience when you start, and certainly from some people when you start digging around your garden, it's not real nice to find a big chunk of cat feces in the middle of your garden when you're digging around. It can also be a health issue, especially with pregnant women, and with if you've got young kids that are running around scratching around in gardens or sand pits or anything else. It's also, you know, people have pets, either rabbits or any of those sorts of pets. Cats can harass them. Also, if you have an aviary or birds, you know, and you don't own a cat, having someone else's cat come onto your property and then harassing your own pets is not good. Other animals, I mean, I'm sure we've all heard blooming feral cats fighting in the middle of the night, especially during that season. You know, it's something that people shouldn't have to deal with. If you don't own a cat, you don't have one on your property, I don't believe that you should be looking after someone else's animal. And native birds, there's a huge amount of reports around how cats damage native birds, native wildlife, you know, reptiles, etc. And it's also the safety of the cat. Cats are a pretty resilient animal, and they can hang on to some pretty severe injuries. So you can imagine what it would be like if you got up in the morning and your cat had been out during the day, during the night, and been attacked by another dog, been hit by a car, or been attacked by a feral cat, only to find it, you know, when the kids walk outside, to have it, you know, sitting there that's been injured. I think it's a responsibility of the people that own the cat that it should be kept on their own property. The controls on breeding, registration are good additions to the Cat Act, but omissions of the ability to keep cats from roaming and interfering in the enjoyment of others creates an issues that local councils who are the agents that have to deal with these issues shouldn't have to face, all because there wasn't a clause put within, or facilities put within the local Cat Act, or within the Cat Act when the state government reviewed it. I think it was a missed opportunity. And like I say, we've tried to do it through the local law and been told that we can't do it. I know there's a lot of other councils that have tried to do it through local law and haven't been able to. So to do it through the planning policy with ties towards amenity and to environment seems to be a sensible option.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Is there a speaker against the motion?
Just a clarification, if I could, Mr. President, is it appropriate to ask officers just in respect to the amendment and the validity of that and the appropriate mechanism through which that's been proposed?
Look, if you've got a question you'd like to ask officers now, I'll allow you to do it. It's perhaps if you can discipline it in time, and then we'll...
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. So I think that was just pretty clearly put in terms of whether or not a scheme is actually the appropriate mechanism through which that proposal is actually put.
Through the Chair, the scheme is an avenue that is possible to go down this path. That being said, it is still subject to public advertising as well as environmental review by the EPA and final decision by the Planning Commission. So putting it in at this stage gives an opportunity. There is no guarantee it will be there at the end, but it's a matter of trying.
Thank you, Mr Henley. That answers the question, councillor.
Thank you very much, Mr
Thank you.
President. Yes,
Is
it
there a speaker against the motion then? Seconder wish to speak in favour?
Yes, please. I'm extremely happy to second this motion, in particular with this amendment. It is something that we spoke briefly about at the end of our workshop, as a way of being able to get something happening with cat local laws. As Councillor Chambers has stated, we really do not have anything in line with the dog local laws. I'm a cat lover, as I know many people aren't. But to me, being a cat lover, it's really important for these laws to be in place to protect our cats, but not only that, to protect our wildlife. I could think of nothing worse than my cat getting outside and attacking the wildlife. There's recently been some of the little honey possums on Facebook that have been rescued from cats and dogs. And these little creatures are only 1.5 inches long, fully grown. So to think of animals like that that can just run wild. So my thinking is that if we can get something like this through, then we're another step towards protecting our wildlife.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, councillor De Haas. Is there a speaker against the motion? Speaker against? Or an amendment to the motion? No speakers against, no amendment. I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Against? That is carried. 8 votes to 0. Councillors, we now go to item 12.1.3, the proposed local planning policy development for which development approval not required, and that is on page 62 of your agenda. Are there any questions you might wish to ask to Mr Henley or Ms Phillips? Any questions? No questions. Is someone prepared to then move the recommendation? Councillor Chambers.
Move the officer's recommendation that council, in accordance with clause 4 of the deemed provisions set out in the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulation, prepare the local planning policy development for which development approval not required, as contained in attachment A.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Chambers. Is it seconded to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Flanagan. So we, Councillor, back to you, Councillor Chambers, to speak to your motion.
Thank you, Chair. I know the policy itself is fairly self-explanatory, but the thing I'd like to note is that we did have, after one of our meetings, this came out of the small business working group, or the small business working group that the Shire has recently done. I think it's fantastic to see some really quick action and some results from the training and the workshop that the council staff did. So, well done.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? Seconder wish to speak in favour?
Nothing further to add, Mr President.
Is there a speaker against or an amendment? No speakers against, no amendment. I'll put to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried 8 votes to 0. Thank you very much. Councillors, we now go to item 12.1.4, page 65, and the adoption of a local planning policy on tiny houses. Any questions you might have to Mr Henley or Ms Phillips on this one? No questions? Somebody prepared to move the motion? Moved by Councillor De Haas.
I would like to move the officer's recommendation that council, in accordance with clause 4(3) of the Deemed Provisions Act, set out in the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 2015 Schedule 2, proceed with the local planning policy tiny houses with modifications as shown in attachment A.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor De Haas. Is there a seconder to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Oram. You can speak to your motion, Councillor De Haas.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. This is something that will certainly help in the full scheme of things towards housing and to getting people into smaller housing, cheaper housing. I think it's something that's very important in this time and age, especially with the amount of people who are looking for accommodation. It's something that's been talked about a lot on Facebook over the last few weeks. For those of you who don't take a lot of interest or action on Facebook, there was quite a big conversation regarding this that I found quite interesting. We didn't get a lot of feedback on it, but people on Facebook are very keen to see this type of thing happening. So I just think it's a very important step forward for the council to be seen to be doing something like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? No speakers against. Is there the seconder can speak to it, Councillor Oram?
Thank you, through the chair. No, Councillor De Haas pretty well covered it all, I think. I'm quite interested in tiny homes at the moment.
Thank you. So is there a speaker against the motion or an amendment? I put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Against, that is carried. 8 votes to nil. Thank you. We go to page 78 in our agenda, and we have the adoption of the local planning policy, chalet development outside of town sites. Any questions you might have to Mr. Henley or Ms. Phillips on this item? No questions? Okay. Someone prepared to move the motion? No one? Oh, thanks, Councillor O'Donnell.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation that council, in accordance with the clause 4(3) of the deemed provisions set out in the planning and development (local planning schemes) regulations 2015 schedule 2, proceed with the local planning policy chalet development outside of townships without modifications as shown in attachment A.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor O'Donnell. Is there a seconder to the motion? Seconded by Councillor Flanagan. Councillor O'Donnell, will you speak to it?
Thank you, Mr. President. I need to say thank you to the staff for bringing these planning policies forward. It just brings estimates into the future with new ideas, and that's what we need here, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? The seconder wish to speak to it?
Nothing
Flanagan?
further. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. President.
Speaker against or an amendment? No amendment. Put to the vote. Those in favour? Against? That's carried 8-0. Councillors, we go now to item 12.1.6 on page 84 and oversized outbuilding. How unusual to get one of these. He hasn't got a vote. Okay. All right, so lot 79 Remark Drive, Castletown. Is there any questions to Mr. Phillips or, Mr. Henley or Ms. Phillips? Councillor Chambers.
I just have one question, if I may, Chair, through to Mr. Henley. In regards to the reason for this shed. My apologies. Just in regards to the reason for the height of the shed, which is a 3.6 roller door, which is for the work vehicle. Do you know the height of the work vehicle?
Through the chair, I'm not aware of that specific detail.
I'm just asking in regards to the local planning scheme in Schedule 1, item 16.5, is that they require an approval for a work vehicle over the height of 3 metres to be parked in a residential property.
Yeah, through the chair, it could also include antennas and things on the vehicle that need that clearance.
Oh, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillors? So is there a mover of the motion to support this, councillors? Am I prepared to move the motion? Oh, thanks, councillor Chambers, nearly went, nearly dropped it.
Having moved the officer's recommendation, that council approve development application 10.2022.5154.1 for an oversized outbuilding shed on lot 7232 Ringland Drive, Castletown, subject to the following conditions 1 through to 9, and also the following advice notes 1 through to 5. And sooner or later I remember to turn the microphone on. Apologies.
Okay, so it's moved by councillor Chambers. Is it seconded? Seconded by councillor Graham. Councillor Chambers, speak to your motion.
No, it's the usual oversized shed that we have, which I think is always a good thing still to come to council just to keep a check on those sorts of things. My question was just in relation to making sure that it was still within the scheme.
Thank you. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Graham? Yeah,
Yes, I have.
he seconded. Did you wish to speak to it?
Oh, no, this is probably for councillor Oborne, who's not here, that usually moves in these motions on oversized sheds, so it's sad she can't be here with us. But support councillor James.
Okay, thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? No speakers against. Any amendments? No amendments. I'll put to the vote. Those in favour. That is carried 8 votes to 0. Thank you. Councillors, now we go past asset management, nil items there. We go to corporate and community services, and the item 12.3.1, small grants approval, which is on page 92 of our agenda. Are there any questions that you have on this item, which would go to Mrs. Baxter? Any questions? No questions? I take it somebody's prepared to move the officer's recommendation. Councillor Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the officer's recommendation to council adopt the small grants approval policy, inclusion of amendments, inclusions and deletions as required.
Thank you, Councillor Flanagan. Is it seconded? Seconded by Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Flanagan, speak to your motion if you wish.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment is to address an anomaly which essentially there was an absence in the policy as adopted by council for approval of the grants in the event of absence or a declarable interest by the CEO of Shire President, and the amendments actually address that anomaly. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? No speakers against. Councillor O'Donnell, do you wish to speak in favour of the motion?
No, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Okay, so is there a speaker against on amendment? Put to the vote. Those in favour? Against? That is carried. Thank you. Councillors, we now go to page 95, which is the community grant guidelines. There's the general community grant guidelines. The items on page 92, as I said, and the recommendations on page 93. Are there any questions you might have to Mrs. Baxter on this item first? No questions? Is someone prepared to move the recommendations on page 96? Anybody? Councillor Chambers.
Move the officer's recommendation that council endorse the amendments to the community grants program guidelines, application forms, and advertise the applications for the 2023-2024 community grants program. I'm just going to leave that on. During January, February and March 23.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers.
I'm just going to leave it on.
Is there a seconder to the motion? Second by Councillor Flanagan. Okay, Councillor Chambers, you can speak to your motion.
This has been a change to the program or a change to the guidelines and certainly to the application forms, which I think will make it way easier for people to understand and hopefully makes it a little more attainable for people that wish to make applications to a wonderful program.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? No speakers against. Seconder wish to speak to it? Councillor Flanagan.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. I just endorse the comments made by Councillor Chambers. Grant applications are onerous as they are. Any process that can actually simplify and make them more transparent and actually an easier and better process for the applicant is a good thing in my view. So I'm happy to endorse the recommendation.
Thank you. Speaker against or an amendment? No speakers against, no amendment. I'll put it to vote. Those in favour? Against, that is carried 8 votes to nil. We now move on to item 12.3.3, renewal of the airport car hire desk, which is on page 109 of your agenda. Are there any questions you might have on this item? Which would go to Mrs. Baxter, I presume, yes. Any questions? No questions? Someone prepared to put forward the recommendation? Councillor Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the officer's recommendation that council enter into a new lease with Felsoft Proprietary Limited, trading as Avis Esperance Car Rentals, subject to 1, the term of the lease being 5 years, 2, lease rental being $1,185.03, including GST, subject to annual rent reviews based on CPI, and that council consider the valuation obtained in June 2022 to be a true indication of the current market rental value. 3, lease preparation fee of $600, including GST, being payable, and 4, the disposition being advertised in accordance with section 3.58 of the Local Government Act 1995 for disposal of property.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a seconder to the motion? Is that Councillor De Haas? Councillor Flanagan, you can speak to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I've really nothing further to add to the officer's report. This is a simple process to release an existing footprint at the airport. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Chair, can I just ask a question? Is that, I know we spoke about it, I can't remember the reduction in size of there's a letter there, did we solve
Well, that was answered at the agenda briefing last week.
Yeah, I can't remember what we said.
So it's not a recent reduction in size, it's probably been around close to 10 years. They could lease two next door to each other if they wish to expand, but there is an upsize there for probably 2 people within the one booth, if but maybe not servicing 2 people servicing clients at the same time.
Thank you. Okay, that's good.
So, so we've had a mover, and I'm looking for a seconder to the motion. Got a seconder. Right, sorry, a quick question has fouled me up on my processes. Councillor Flanagan, do you like to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think I've spoken to the motion in a really eloquent way.
Well, there was a question that come in that might have changed that thought. So is there anyone speaking against the motion? Seconder wishes to speak to it.
I have nothing to add, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against on amendment? I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour, please show. It's carried 8 votes to nil. Thank you, councillors. We go then to item 12.3.4, outstanding rates debt recovery GPC list. Page 113 of your agendas. Are there any questions to Mrs. Baxter on this item? No questions? Someone prepared to move the recommendation, which is on page 115 of your agenda? Someone prepared to... Councillor Graham?
Yeah, I'd just like to move that the officer's recommendation that council acknowledge the outstanding ratepayers that have progressed to the next level of debt recovery, general procedure claim.
Thank you. It's moved by councillor Graham. Is it seconded? Seconded by councillor Flanagan. Councillor Graham, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, it's not a large list that's outstanding, but it's one of the responsibilities of owning land that we must pay our rates and etc. And so this is just to take it to the next level of the procedure of those outstanding debts.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? No speakers against. Is there the seconder wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll just make the comment that within the existing process, people struggling to pay their rates have sufficient avenues open to them to sit down, talk to council, work through a process of how they might actually settle that debt. So there is actually a process in place for people to be able to do that if that may be struggling. And this is once that process is exhausted, we go to the next step, which is this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flanagan. Councillor Graham, you've spoken to it. I'm getting lost on it now. So we've got the speaker in favour of it, correct? No. And Councillor Graham, you second it? Did you?
No, I moved it. He seconded it. Now we're ready for
He's spoken to it. Right out.
President?
Yep. All right. Is there a speaker against? Is there an amendment? I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour. Thank you. That is carried. Let's get it back into play. So, we go to item 12.3.5, the adoption of the 2021-2022 annual report. The items on page 117. Are there any questions you have to Mrs. Baxter on this large document? Okay, someone prepared to move the recommendation which is on page 118. Councillor Chambers.
I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation that, didn't even have to turn it on this time, that council accepts the 2021-2022 Shire Investments Annual Report as presented. 2, convenes the annual general meeting of electors for 7 p.m. Tuesday the 7th of February 2023 at the Esperance Civic Centre, and requests that the CEO, pursuant to section 5.29 and 5.55 of the Local Government Act 1995, provide the requisite statutory local public notice of acceptance of the 2021-2022 Shire Investments Annual Report, and the time and date of the annual general meeting of electors.
Thank you, Councillor Chambers. Is it seconded? Seconded. Councillor De Haas. Councillor Chambers, you can speak to your item.
Thank you, Chair. This is a report that we get every year. It's some fairly extensive reading, but it's also very, very informative. And it's good to then carry on and have the annual general electors meeting, or the annual electors meeting, which is another great interface for the council and the community.
Thank you. Is the speaker against the motion? Seconded. Councillor De Haas, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I have nothing to add, thank you.
Thank you. Is the speaker against or an amendment? I put it to the vote. Those in favour? Against? That is carried 8 votes to 0. We can now go on to item 12.3.6, the audit report 2021-22. And this item is on page 119 of your agendas. Any questions you have to Mrs. Baxter? No? Okay. Then someone prepared to move the audit committee recommendation, which is the item on page 121 of your agenda. Councillor Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Audit Committee recommendation that Council, number 1, receives the 2021 Annual Financial Report incorporating the audit report as attached to Attachment A, and 2, adopts the Annual Financial Report and Audit Report for the 2021-22 financial year.
Thank you, Councillor Flanagan. Is there a seconder to the motion? Seconded by Councillor O'Donnell. So it's moved and seconded. Councillor Flanagan, you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr. President. First off, I'd just like to congratulate council officers, in particular Ms Baxter and her team, in relation to the preparation of our accounts to an extent that we can all breathe a sigh of relief. We've got an unqualified, unblemished audit report, noting that there was a finding in relation to the fair value measurement valuation process, which identified that there may not have been an appropriate trigger mechanism within our processes to identify a point at which we might need to do a revaluation outside the normal statutory 1 to 5 year revaluation. That is a matter that is quite easily remedied. The Shire is actually undertaking a formal valuation process for 2023 in any event, so that's good to see, and on that basis I'm more than happy to move the recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, is there seconded to the motion? Councillor O'Donnell? Yep. Okay. So we've had a mover and a seconder. Is there anyone speaking against it? Anyone speaking against? Councillor O'Donnell, did you wish to speak in favour?
Thank you, Mr. President. I need to say that I concur with Councillor Flanagan and just say my own special thanks to the staff for the enormous work they do in this area and for keeping the books of the Shire in good health. Urge your body to vote on this.
Thank you. So, councillors, is there a speaker against? No speakers against. Is there an amendment? No amendments. I put to the vote. Those in favour. Against, that is carried 8 votes to nil. We go to item 12.3.7, which is on page 124 of your agenda, and the first item is the financial services report. Are there any questions to Mrs Baxter on this item? No? Is someone prepared to move the recommendation related to this? Councillor O'Donnell, thank you.
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation that council receive the attached report entitled Monthly Financial Services Report, incorporating the statement of the financial activity for the month of November 2022.
Thank you. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Flanagan, Councillor O'Donnell, you can speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Not much to say on this. It's really handy that we have a briefing session the week before, so we can all ask the questions that we required answers on, and I urge you to vote in favour of this motion.
Is the speaker against the motion? The seconder wish to speak?
No, thank you. Nothing further to add, Mr. President.
Right. Is there a speaker against or an amendment? I'll put to the vote. Those in favour. Against, that is carried. 8 votes to nil. We move on then to executive services, where we go to item 12.4.1, Wagga Best Practice Governance Review, which is on page 170 of your agendas. Are there any questions on this item to the CEO? Any questions? No questions to the CEO. Then is someone prepared to move the recommendation, which includes all the rankings of the options? Councillor O'Donnell.
I'd like to move, thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation that council advise Wagga that the preferred governance model review is option 1, and the remaining options ranked in the following order: option 2, option 4, option 3 and option 5.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Is there seconder to the motion? Councillor De Haas. Councillor O'Donnell.
Oh.
Wish to speak to your
Yes,
motion?
thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to thank the, all of the councillors, for last month of laying this on the table and giving all of us a chance to attend like webinars and the workshops to better understand what's happening in the Wellga and the, for the better governance options. We have come up with this ranking that we have, and I think I'm pretty happy with that. So I'd like you to vote in favour of the options that we have up here.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against? A seconder wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. I'd just like to thank the staff for giving us that opportunity as well, for making the day, the time to sit with us, to take us through it, and the fact that we actually had that opportunity to attend the webinar and then to attend the workshop. It gave us a far greater insight into knowing what we're actually looking at and heading toward. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against or an amendment? I put it to vote. Those in favour? It's carried 8 votes to 0. Councillors, we then go to the information bulletin, which is on page 214 of your agenda, and that's item 12.4.2. And are there any questions to Mr. Burge on this item? No questions? Then, okay, then we will, someone prepared to move the officer's recommendation? Everybody's quiet? Councillor O'Donnell?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation that council accepts 1, information bulletin December 2022, 2, council priorities summary corporate performance November 2022, 3, delegations discharge corporate resources, 4, community grants program 2022-23 small grants November 2022, and 5, thank you letter Shire of Esperance State Health Incident Coordination Centre, Department of Health.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor O'Donnell. Is there a seconder to the motion? Councillor Chambers, Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was really happy to move this motion, and the one thing I really enjoyed reading was the letter from the Department of Health, and he congratulated us on our handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. It might be a generic letter, but I enjoyed reading it anyway.
Thank you. Is there a speaker against the motion? Seconder wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Chair.
Speaker against? Amendment? Nil. Those in favour, please show. Against, that's carried 8 votes to 0. So reports of committees, minutes of committees, page 255, and we do have an item there. The audit committee minutes. So item 255, reports of committees. This is the audit committee, and any questions to Mr. Burge? No? Someone prepared to move the recommendation? Councillor Flanagan?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the officer's recommendation that council accept the following unconfirmed minutes. 1, audit committee meeting minutes, the 6th of December 2022.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Flanagan. Is it seconded? Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Flanagan, you wish to speak to it?
Not a lot to add, thank you, Mr. President, other than as a participant of that meeting, it was a great meeting. We all enjoyed ourselves. It was great. Thank you.
That's always easy when you've got a clear audit, isn't it? So is there a speaker against the motion? The seconder wish to speak to it?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm also a member of this committee. and always thoroughly enjoy spending that time with their staff and listening to the way they conduct their finances. Very easy to understand, and it's in good health now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And so we've no other speakers? Against? Amendments? Put to the vote. Those in favour? That is carried. 8 votes to 0. Now we move on to the motions of which notice has been given. Are there any, Mr. CEO? Okay, members' questions with or without notice? No. Urgent business approved by decision. Is there any?
Nothing urgent.
Nothing urgent, thank you. Matters behind closed doors, there's nil. We get to public question time again. Dr. Newkirk, your opportunity again. Okay, all right, so that means, no, I'm genuine. You wish to ask another question? Okay, shaking his head, thank you very much. So, councillors, that concludes this meeting for which we gathered tonight, and I'd like to thank everybody who attended. I'd also like to acknowledge the people in the gallery and the press gallery for their commitment to be with us, and for all those people that are online, and I'll declare the meeting closed. But, okay. Before and Merry Christmas, well that's probably the appropriate one, but councillors, I did want to make a